Right now, are you feeling excited? Because I know I am. We're just about to kick off Mjadala. Remember, we're having a conversation with an advocate, that is Brian Babu. We're going to be talking about your rights as a Kenyan employee. All right?
Yeah.
It's going to be very dope. So I suggest if you have questions, put them down there. Actually, hit us up on the social media. It's at Vibes Radio KE.
Yeah.
So we can ask, Mr. Brian Babu, if he can answer those questions for you.
So first, let's check if you can even hear us. Brian, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
As guys are great. Karibu sana kwenye show. I don't know, do you have earphones so we can hear you clearly? In the meantime, guys, remember Brian Babu is an advocate and he's going to be taking us through, the labor law. You can imagine a lot of us are, you're probably on your way to work. Have you ever even thought about what is enshrined in the Constitution for you? Ama, unafika job, like for example, during COVID times.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people were given the axe?
Imagine.
Right, and I'm sure some was not in totally the most legal way, but because you don't know your rights, and this
Ask him a land.
and some narrative that you keep hearing, especially with our leadership, is that youth wanapenda to complain, and I think that comes from not knowing
The rights.
your rights, what's in the law. So thank you so much, Brian, for taking the time out this morning to speak to us.
You're welcome, thank you.
So just in brief, tell us a bit about yourself.
My name is Brian Babu, as you've heard. My Twitter handle is Kalasinga. It's a bit famous.
Kalasinga. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I practice at a law firm called MG Law and Company Advocates. I'm a car enthusiast, and I also enjoy a bit of Formula One.
Oh, nice.
So that's about me.
That's dope.
Formula One, as in uko na Hamilton ama wetu na uko ile nini
Mimi
ya
ni-
India?
Mimi ni Max Verstappen damu.
Okay. Nilikuwa nafikiria ni ile timu ya India maze. Anyway,
That's what's up.
welcome to the show, of course, Kwambooks and Kev, and we have a lot of questions. But first, the labor law is very extensive. Could we,
Yes.
what should an ordinary Kenyan know about what the labor law has in store for them?
So for an ordinary Kenyan, I think the first thing to know is what the Constitution provides when it comes to labor.
Yeah.
And what the Constitution says under Article 41 is that employees have a few basic rights when it comes to labor, which are called the fair labor practices. And these rights are basically things like the right to fair remuneration, which is basically your pay. You're not supposed to be underpaid. You're supposed to be paid basically above the minimum wage or at the minimum wage. Then you also have the right to reasonable working conditions. These are things like, you've been hearing lately, health workers talking about PPEs,
Yes. Yeah.
personal protective equipment, that falls under reasonable working conditions. Basically things like water,
Yeah.
basic things,
Yeah.
a clean environment, Also, employees have a right to join and form and participate in trade union activities,
Yeah.
what you hear from Kotu, Francis Atwoli and whatnot. Then employees also have a right to go on strike, which has a process,
Yeah.
when you want to go on strike. But also the Act provides for the rights of employers,
Yeah.
and employers have a right to also form their own organizations, and they are also allowed to participate in the activities of employers' organizations. That's the basic thing that is provided for in the Constitution.
And I'm listening to you saying, okay, fine, your employer should provide for you a safe space to work, right? I have seen numerous Mjengo construction sites where
Yes.
you're seeing people working, lifting heavy. This place is dangerous, but there are barely any helmets.
Yeah.
There are barely any protective shoes. But the supervisor yamevaa viatu zenye hama ikianguka kwa mguu yake yako safe, lakini mse amevaa gumboots ama silpas kwa construction site. Is this what is enshrined in the Constitution?
No, that is actually unconstitutional. But in Kenya, I always say in Kenya we have a problem with implementation of the law.
Yeah.
Because ideally the government should actually come and see that people are working are being provided with the reasonable working conditions that they should be provided with. Essentially, such an employee should ideally complain through the various labor offices that are around the country.
Yeah.
But the problem is always implementation. The law is there, but implementation is the problem, and corruption.
Why is that a problem? Why is implementation a problem?
Corruption. I'd say it's corruption and Kenyan culture.
Yeah.
No one wants to follow up.
Yeah.
You report, like how basically, sometimes you can report something to the police and they don't do anything.
Yeah.
Such things. But it also depends. There are some labor officers who are actually quite good, and they actually follow up and ensure that meetings are held between employees and employers to ensure that the employees are getting what they actually need to work, and that they actually and that their rights are not infringed upon.
Wow. All right, Brian, that was a good intro. We're going to just take a small breather, give our guys a chance to, think about what you just said. If you got any questions, remember, guys, you can always hit us up on #Kwambooks and Kevin. Get Facebook, cheza kama wewe. Kama kuna swali, maybe you're an employer somewhere, you're an employee somewhere, and you've got questions, especially about labor laws. The time is now.
Morning Vibes, where you are the MVP. No negative vibes.
All right, very good morning to you, Nairobi. It is exactly 21 minutes after 8. Remember, this is Mjadala, and we're talking to Mr. Brian Babu, who's an advocate on the High Court of Kenya, and we're talking all things your rights as an employee in Kenya.
I want to shout out a couple of people who are actually coming through, and there's son of Akoth Hapo and some Godspeed Wakili can help a project. In a project, it would be best if the law was in PDF doc to download. Kras Skimpy Anasema. Brian, welcome back to the show, by the way.
Thank you.
You sure but anyway, that's the story for another day. Cyrus Campi Anauliza, which is the right way to ask for salary increment in two situations of organizations, like one, union works, and second, management workers? And what if no action is taken? Do we have a right to strike now?
Normally salary should be increased over time. I can't remember. I think it was 10%. If I'm not wrong, there's a rate at which it should be increased over time because of things like inflation and the rising cost of living.
Yeah.
So employers should ideally also increase the salaries of employees over time to match the current living conditions we are in.
Yeah.
You can't expect that the same salary you're earning in 1991 is what you're earning in 2020.
But the reality is that there are people who have earned the same salary for the past 15 years.
Yes. So ideally, if you're unionized, if the employees are unionized, the union should actually negotiate what we call a collective bargaining agreement. You've heard of them, CBA, with the employers on the salary. That is one way. You can go through the union, and you've seen that one of the things we've said is that an employee has a right to join a union. Yeah. So basically, the easiest way is usually for most informal workers or most people in the informal sector, the best way is through the union, because that way you have bargaining power, and it's negotiated across the industry, actually across the entire industry. Then for other employees, it's the usual. You basically go to your supervisor, you go to a manager, and you say this and this and this, and then you negotiate an increment with your employer. That's the step that should be taken. But then if the employer is not increasing your salary over time without any good reason, you can always also report to the labor officer. But also we need to be aware of we're living in difficult times, even for employers. Companies are not making as much money as they hope to make. So it's something that actually we need to negotiate. It's something that parties need to sit down and meet halfway.
What if you're in a situation where, let's say 2020 was the best year of our lives, and there was no COVID, and things were good, but then your employers just you go to your employer and say, all right, I've been working here for 2 years, this is what I've been doing, this is what I brought in, look how my sales have been tops, and then your employer says, okay, I'll look into it, and after 2 months you've lost your job. Now
that can be that's illegal. Actually, that's unfair termination. You cannot be terminated just because you asked an increment.
Yeah.
And where you're terminated because you asked for an increment, you can actually go to court to seek a redress.
So
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
Wakili, during this COVID
Yes.
season, can you just give us specific scenarios where, as an employee, you can say, I will sue you for infringing on my rights. Just be practical enough.
Yeah. So, like during these COVID times, I think most companies are struggling. And one situation that you can actually tell your employer, I will sue you, is when, for instance, you go to work one morning and then you're told there's no kazi imeisha. You're told go home, or an employer just wakes up and gives you a notice and tells you there's no more work, go home.
Wow.
Such scenario you can actually go to the labor court, because there's a procedure to these things. It's not, an employer cannot just wake up and decide to tell an employee there's no more work. There's a whole process that's supposed to be undertaken under the law. Basically, in fact, if an employer is seeing a situation where he cannot sustain paying you because there's no work or something, first of all, you have to give a notice of at least a month. And then in that notice for at least a month, you should consult with the employee and negotiate the best possible outcome. Basically an exit package of some sorts. You're getting?
Yeah.
So basically, the basic minimums is supposed to be paid. That 1 month salary notice is supposed to be paid, severance pay, all your leave days. Some employers are generous enough to have an exit package.
Yeah.
Basically, you should not just go give your due empty-handed and suddenly.
And
you should be given reasonable notice.
Yeah.
And pay.
Does this work also for people in the informal sector? I get places where there's HR, the HR person will call you, okay, so what's combo? So what happened?
What happened?
And they'll be like, okay, so shika golden handshake. But but if I'm working, say in I have an employer who I'm running their shop, right? In Tao, mina kwangapo kwa front desk. Na uzezi manguo. Alafu employer me decide, by the way, hii COVID imenigonga, cheki kesho usikam.
Yeah. It applies across the board. On for as long as you're what you call a permanent employee.
Yeah.
And how you become a permanent employee is either the contract says you're a permanent employee or you're paid a salary every month. So as long as you're paid a salary every month, you're basically a permanent employee.
Even if I don't have a contract?
Even if you don't have a contract. Because what happens, there are three categories of employees,
Yeah.
The first one is the casual employee. The casual employee is the one who's paid at the end of the day. Every day, basically they're not assured of the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right? That's a casual employee. But a casual employee can become permanent if they work for more than 30 days continuously.
Oh.
And they're paid that. Yeah, so if you work more than 30 days, you work 2 months, 3 months, at the same place, being paid the daily wage, you can actually be converted. Actually, the law actually converts you to a permanent employee.
Okay.
Then the second category of an employee is the permanent employee, and this is the employee who either has a contract that says he's permanent and pensionable, or is paid a salary at the end of the month, without any defined term limits or contractual limits. Or 3, one who's been converted to a permanent employee by operation of the law, meaning like the casual worker who's been converted to an employee, to a permanent employee. Then the third category is the employees who are under a fixed term contract. Basically, you're given a 2-year contract, a 3-year contract, and then it ends once the term lapses. Yes. So for all permanent employees, the law actually applies across the board. So basically, the employer has to give you notice. He cannot just wake up and just tell you to go.
So let me get this straight. Just before we take another short commercial break, I know all MVPs got their papers and pens. A lot of questions coming in on Twitter, on SMS line 40131, and also on Facebook. If I'm, say, a house help in your house, I have worked here for 30 days on the 3rd of November. Right? And then you wake up on the 4th of November and tell me, Sasa, bye. I can take you to court.
It depends. It depends on whether there's a probation period or or you had actually finished your probation period. If you on probation period, you're supposed to give 7 days notice.
So either way, I can't just dismiss. I can't just be dismissed by the whim of the wife's husband. Wife is worried that the husband thinks I'm cute.
But now, okay, the only situation where you can be dismissed suddenly, when we call it summary dismissal, it's a situation where perhaps as an employee you've grossly misconducted yourself, or basically you've done something like perhaps stealing from an employer, coming to work while drunk, but even then, there's a procedure to follow in terms of disciplinary. You cannot just still wake up and fire without giving the employee a chance to be heard. You know, you have, so basically the employee has to be given a chance to explain his side of the story before you can actually fire them. And there's a process to it which you can talk about.
We will talk about that. Hold that thought, Brian, and maybe grab yourself water or something. Kevin,
what's up?
Unasikia hizi story? Unajua wale watu wenye ushinda wana change ma house help car ngodha. Unajua wale wase wenye uko mse unajua una kwanga supervisor wa nini construction anambia, "Wewe Nyango wewe kwanza usirudi hapa. Wewe usirudi hapa." Na Unyango amekuwa akifanya job hapo for 3 months.
Imagine.
Na mwambia wewe kwenda huko sura kama kiatu. You're doing the wrong thing. And that's why we have Brian Babu here. He's going to be sharing with us, okay, so what is the procedure that you're supposed to follow as an employer if you feel like, okay, house help me amenifika kwenyeko.
Morning Vibes, where you are the MVP. No negative vibes.
Remember, 104.5 is the frequency, so you can tune in frequently to catch your daily dose of good vibes right here on Vibes. Remember, the website is vibesradio.co.ke. Hey!
And Brian and Kevin are talking to you.
Yeah, mazina. But side, pia kuna Kwambox, your captain of good vibes. I hope unajinais pali tu uko.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So it's all about Mjadala right now. And we're talking about your rights as an employee. So if you're an employee and you're listening to us, if you got any questions for the advocate, Mr. Brian Badu, who, by the way, is an advocate.
Did you call him Badu?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Wait, Brayo.
Brayo is a man.
Umza bekuta Badu.
Normal.
Hey, unaona venye Brayo kwanga wako too easy.
He knows I'm the bro. He knows I'm his bro.
Two guys walked into a bar. They were like, "Hi, my name is Brayo. Hi, my name is Kevo."
It's Brian Babu, my guy.
That's the story of Nairobi. But anyway, welcome back to the show. Brian, when we were on break, we've seen a lot of messages on Facebook. Let me just read to you some of the despair. And you'll help me, decipher why do Kenyans feel like this, all right? So on Facebook, we have some guy who's written his name, I think in Kiarabu, amesema rights gani. So the question we asked is, do you fully understand your rights as a Kenyan employee? And so he says, rights gani, we're forced to live under desperate condition in a way that you don't know what your right is and when you're being exploited. Someone else here says, that's well done, Rotich says, there's no right in Kenya today. Paka Mwindi anadhulumiwa, unapeleka kesi mahakamani, Mwindi anakuja na hongo, then unasikia kesi yako inarushwa next year. Hauna job, so itabidi usarende. Is this common for employees in Kenya?
Let me comment on that. I know there's this issue of how long cases take to be concluded.
Yeah.
And like that, I can't remember his name, but he said that Mwindi anakuja koti anapatiana hongo, kesi inarushwa hadi next year. I think you might be aware that the Law Society of Kenya and civil societies have been pushing the president to appoint judges.
Yeah.
I think it's been in the media.
Yes.
And the president has refused to appoint judges. And the Employment and Labor Relations Court has only 12 judges in the entire country.
Whoa, we have 47 counties.
Yes, in the entire country. 12.
Wow.
So and there were names that were proposed to be appointed by the Judicial Service Commission to increase the number of these judges so that cases can move a bit faster.
Yeah.
Now, I practice in, I do quite a number of employment matters, and I can say for a fact
Yeah.
that the employment court is overwhelmed, and it gets to a point where, let's say like last year, 2019, before COVID, they were listening to 2015 matters.
Whoa.
You see?
Whoa.
So if you have your case that it's a 2018, 2019 matter,
Yeah.
they tell you they can't listen to you. They're giving priority to the old matters.
Jesus.
Yeah, and this is because of partly due to the few judges that are there who are available to hear the matter.
Yeah.
Yes.
That
So
is
it's a whole systemic issue. It's not. And most people assume it's the judge has been bribed to push the matter to next year, but not really. Actually, they can't actually hear you. They are overwhelmed.
So let me get this straight. So you're saying that for Kenyans who are listening right now, is that badala kukunywa rege na maraga, unafaa kuwa ukidemand kwamba MP wako anafanya legislation ndio mpate these simple things, because at the end of the day unapatiwa ka 50 bob unaenda unaimba unaimba hiyo rege, alafu unasahau that there are basics. Employer wako kulipa ukaenda kotini, ikesi yako ita take 10 years.
Yes,
that's mad.
That's such basic. You know, you're being denied your access to justice. You know.
Yeah.
And it's not because someone has been bribed. It's because of a systemic issue.
Wow.
In government. Yes.
So, all right. So, Wakili, I'm going to give you a scenario here. And we were having a conversation with Sheila off air before Jadala. So now, picture this. There's a female employee in the mining sector, for example. Yeah. And then she's there. She's saying, and I know the law says that, you can't discriminate against genders, especially, either gender. Yeah. So now you have a situation where a lady wants to do like crazy work. She wants to go deep in the mines, and she goes there, and then she's supposed to leave like, let's say, heavy rocks and all these things. And then the employer is like, you can't do it. And then, anamwacha ifanye, but eventually you can see she's struggling. And then now the employer is like, now you, kaa hapa kando kidogo.
So basically discrimination based on gender.
Yeah, and ability. So how would the law address that? In the event that this lady wants to sue the employer?
I think discrimination would be where maybe the lady is actually fired because she's not able to do that work. But ideally, I mean, we have to accept there's some jobs sometimes are very difficult for sometimes either gender. Mining, for example, or very, very hard labor, manual labor jobs can sometimes be difficult for women to do, and you'll find not even many women apply for these positions. But the best thing for employers to do is to you can employ the woman, but then give her duties that are within her ability, But ideally, if you feel like you've been discriminated, you can always file a petition in the High Court, in the Employment High Court, to seeking a declaration that you've been discriminated upon and damages and etc.
So the law supports. Let's move it from say heavy labor. Imagine a scenario where we're all in the IT space, and the employer thinks, okay, he wants to maybe create a task force, or he wants to create like a team that can be able to build this new app, and he decides, okay, he's going to pick only guys, and
if he's actually discriminating on the basis of your gender, you have to accept, you have to prove in court the reason you are not in that team was because you're a woman. And if you're able to demonstrate that, then you have a good case.
So the
challenge is always demonstrating that.
All right, so the law supports that. There's a question here by Maddox. Actually, let's go to the next phase of things, because we're kind of running out of time, and this is a really great conversation. Thank you so much for taking your time out to speak to us about this. There are situations where you've signed a contract, it says you should be paid on the 24th. Then your salary comes on whatever date your employer feels like. And so there's someone here who's asking, are their rights being infringed?
Sorry, you froze for a moment.
Sorry, I'm saying you're supposed to be paid, say, on the 24th, but your salary just shows up on the 24th of 2 years later, and it's very sporadic when the employer wants to pay you. Is this
Yes.
infringing upon my rights?
Yes, that is actually infringing upon the employee's rights, because part of the rights under fair remuneration is to be paid on time or when you're supposed to be paid.
Yeah.
And there's something we normally call constructive dismissal. Constructive dismissal is where you're not fired as an employee, but because of the working conditions such as delayed salaries, you're forced to quit.
Yeah.
When that happens, you can actually take your employer to court, on that basis, and be awarded some money, you know, because you've been forced to quit your job because of the employer failing to perform part of his obligations.
Yeah. All right.
So it's actually illegal. You're not supposed to do that.
All right. Onesimus Desmond was asking this question. It was like, is it fair for salaries to be delayed from the 15th from the agreed 5th each month, or the employer is just misusing us? I hope that has been answered. Well, Eriko Prince was asking about increment of salary. But let's go to the other thing. Discrimination, harassment, unfair treatment in the workplace by anyone because of race, color. This is something that we've definitely spoken about. I'm going to open the phone lines, maybe take 2 or 3 questions to see where people are thinking. Remember, you can call us up. The number is 0719012700. Kwambux and Kev, good morning.
Morning, Kwambux. Mutara.
Morning to you, brother.
Morning. Morning, Wakili.
Morning.
Sasa mimi naitwa, let me go with the name Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Yes, I'm fine.
I can't hear you properly. Perhaps you can.
I will break it down for you.
Hello?
Jack, unasemaje?
Niko na swali kama mbili kwa wakili.
All right.
Kuhusu kuna kampuni nilikuwa nafanya, then tukawa dismiss na termination, and then barua ingine ikakuja ya what do we call it, summary dismissal. Tukaenda kwa watu wa union, but wakapewa pesa, wakaongwa, wakatuacha kwa mataa. And then tukachukua lawyer pia. So kesi ikawa hiyo ya kuruka tu, kujeni next month, hivyo mpaka ikabidi tuachane naye kwa sababu hatukuwa kazini. Now the current job yenye niko nayo sasa saa hii, watu upigwa
Physically.
Unapigwa na unafutwa kazi.
Hey.
Na ukijaribu kuenda unatumia polisi. Na kuna polisi moja huwa anatumika sana
kukuja kuwachapa.
No, umepigwa physically.
Yes.
Then unatafuta msaada kwa polisi. Yeye ndio huwa anatumwa kule. Mambo yako inaisha hivyo na kazi unafutwa, then unaenda hivyo. Another thing, unafutwa bila notice.
Wow.
Bila notice. Okay.
Na hii kampuni haina service yoyote. Umefanya kazi for 2 years, siku unavutwa, labda una notice, you just go like that.
Wow.
So swali nitaka kuuliza wakili. Kwa scenario kama hiyo mtu saidika vipi?
All right. Thank you so much, Jack. I'm sorry about your situation. I gotta let you go ndio nipatie wakili nafasi ya kujibu swali lako.
Yeah.
All right. So, Brian, I don't know if you got any of that.
I had some snippets, but not everything.
Yeah. First, this guy says that he was at a job where there was wrongful dismissal, and so he went through the union. As you said, those are your options, and he basically says that the union basically were bribed.
Yes.
And so, yeah, he ended up high and dry. The court case was dragged, and eventually they just had to let go because they were, it was dragging. And then so his current employer right now wanachapwa. Wanachapwa, alafu wanafanya abrupt dismissal. And apparently they're even using a police officer. So when you go to complain in the police, this is the police who goes now and shuts down the corruption that you were talking about. So he's asking, how should someone go about this?
Yeah.
Now, first I think the best way to start is to explain the process of dismissal. Okay. where an employer wants to what we call summarily dismiss an employee. And summary dismissal can only happen in certain instances. It has to be very gross misconduct, such as an employee being absent from work without permission.
Yeah.
Like being drunk, insubordination, committing crimes. Now, when that happens, because he's mentioned, the guy who called, he's mentioned that there's abrupt dismissals. So what's supposed to happen is this. One, an employer should actually give you warnings. Yeah. If at all there's a reason to give you a warning, a warning letter or a verbal warning. Then an employer should write to you. It has to be in writing, actually. A letter telling you to show cause why disciplinary action should not be taken against you for this and this and this and this. Then after that, you give your response in writing. Then after that, again, you're invited for what we call an oral hearing. An employer invites you for an oral hearing before a disciplinary committee. And when they're inviting you, they tell you this is the reason why disciplinary action is being taken against you. This is what will be discussed. You did this and this on this particular day. And you go for the oral hearing. And normally you're supposed to go with an employee of your choice as your witness or as your You do the oral hearing, and once that is done, the employer should now either choose to forgive you or dismiss you. But then when they dismiss you, they give you all the reasons why they've dismissed you, and these reasons should be provable in court. Now, he's mentioned also that he's being beaten. Yeah. Now that goes again to the issue of the working environment, and that in itself is actually illegal. One of the ways you can approach it is you can actually file a petition in court, as the employees of that particular company, or because of this particular, again, I mentioned constructive dismissal. You see, when you're beaten, it's highly likely you will leave that place of employment. Because you're being beaten, you cannot work there. And once if that happens, you can actually sue your employer and plead, or in your case, you say you are constructively dismissed because you used to be beaten at work and you could not work anymore.
But what about a situation where you're being beaten because labda ulikuja late, kneel down hapa toa, and then you have to go continue with work, and because we are in desperate times, COVID times.
Yes.
What other way can I go about it that will still, not get me fired?
Now, unfortunately, I'll say we live in a country without processes, and we live in a country where, ideally, like such a situation, you should report to the police that you're being beaten, because that is actually a criminal offense. Ideally. But like that guy has mentioned, now the policeman is the one who is also now coming and going further, and then the union is not helping. You could go to the labor office in government. If you want to keep your employment, you can actually go to complain at the labor office and say this is happening at this place. And the labor office should actually intervene and deal with that situation. But again, these work very well in very perfect in a country where people actually follow the law. The other challenge is that the labor officer can come, see indeed it's happening, and then he's bribed. Again, goes back to corruption.
Oh wow.
So if people actually dealt with corruption, we deal with so much in this country.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. Brian, we gotta end this conversation here, but I feel like if you're up to it, we could do a session on Facebook with some of our listeners, because a lot of questions are coming in, and I know that people have specific scenarios and things that they want to ask. I don't know if you'd be available maybe for 1 hour this Friday. We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about it.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks,
and have a fabulous morning. We appreciate your time. That's been Brian Babu. He's an advocate of the High Court, and he's been talking to us about the labor law. And literally all I'm learning is that Wakenya, we need to know our rights. The more you continue to kupanda to politics and forget that these leaders are there to make your life easier, ndio unapata employer wako maze anakupiga kofi, anakufire, you know, and the law is there. We have a beautiful constitution. All our ideas, our hopes and dreams are enshrined in it.
Yes.
But the execution hapo ndio inakuanga shida. The enforcement of the law.
Pretty much, Maze, pretty much. And people actually have to learn these things. The law is there to protect you, especially as an employee, Maze.
Even as an employer.
I just cannot believe people get beaten up. As in this,
but
this is common, really.
Is that even the worst thing? Because you can find yani employer wako ana decide alafu akupati mshande yako. So ana decide as in usual that time you have a landlord who you pay at a specific time, right? Anajua rent hapa ni on the 2nd. Mshande yako inakam 18. Saa zingine inakam 10th. Saa zingine inakam 5th. You know, it's so and this is all because enforcement is a problem. So remember guys, as we're educating you, at the end of the day 2022 si ni wewe. 2022 ni wewe kwa ballot. Wewe utadecide utapiga kura vitu zenye zina make sense ama utapatiwa t-shirt na kofia.
Morning Vibes, where you are the MVP. No negative vibes.